Hi, I'm Emily McLaughlin. I'm the new Policy and Research Officer at ALLFIE. So the original slot for this part of the talk was to focus on parents of disabled children and the impact on education during the cost of living crisis. I am filling in, so full disclosure, I am not the person that was supposed to be speaking on this today, but I'm going to do my best to kind of give context around the national kind of policy points of it, but also the things that we are hearing at ALLFIE around this topic. And I think the thing that almost echoes Svetlana's words is what we hear from parents of disabled children specifically is just how exhausted they are. And the phrase that I hear most often is they're just trying to get through to like the end of the day. Even if the end of the day is like 3:30, it's not even 10 o'clock at night, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think this has been the case before the pandemic, before the kind of current cost of living crisis, because I think we have to acknowledge the historical legacy of what kind of school-age children trying to get access to education and their parents are going through, especially if they are from households where the parents themselves are also disabled, which is often something overlooked. You can have disabled parents and disabled children at the same time. So I think we have to look at this, but more specifically what we're seeing worryingly at ALLFIE is an increase in exclusions through the pandemic and after the pandemic. So a lot of children are not returning to school, whether that be because their EHCP plans are not being re-implemented, but also because they may be clinically vulnerable and can't go back to the school setting because those requirements to keep them safe are not being provided. So something that we're also seeing anecdotally is parents not really being able to make a choice about their children's education. They are being pushed into alternative provision just because the kind of local mainstream schools either have failed to implement their kind of ECHP forms or plans, I should say, because of the things I'm going to mention a bit later on, but also because of the timing of the year, because the process takes so long. They're desperate for their children to get some kind of qualification to not miss out on their learning. And so the path of least resistance is often to go into a segregated provision or a special school, which is not necessarily where the parents want their child to be placed, but they seem like they have no other choice given the resources that are currently available. What is even more worrying, and again, this is a phrase I'm going to use quite a lot in this speech, sorry, it is a bit depressing, is that we are seeing reports like teaching assistants are leaving the sector to go and work in supermarkets because the pay is higher. And this is even teaching assistants with specialist kind of qualifications, such like having the BSL interpretation skills, which means that the actual workforce that is available to support disabled children to access education is getting smaller and smaller. And this is not just at the lower pay grades of kind of teaching assistants and junior members of staff, but even things like educational psychologists, there is a national shortage. So I welcome, with a massive caveat, the increased funding that was announced yesterday, because even though there is an increase in funding that was announced yesterday, we don't know where that funding is going, when that funding is going to be released, and as well as this pressure to go into segregated placements, we have seen an increase in the funding that's been given from the government actually going into segregated provision rather than to kind of fill the holes that currently exist in mainstream provision that would allow children to stay in their local communities and would be more aligned with inclusive educational principles. We have seen over the summer that schools were threatening to be closed for either part of the week or full weeks. Schools are running out of cash. We again don't know if that is still the case with this new funding stopgap that has been announced, but we do know that that is going to impact the most, I don't want to say the vulnerable children, the more oppressed and marginalized children that are then not going to have access to free school meals, you know, the heating of the school and all of those things that actually within their households puts more pressure onto the kind of households and the cost of living crisis, and just exacerbates the existing situation. If you also put into account the teaching unions are going on strike, the nurses are going on strike, the doctors are going on strike, everything that disabled children need to access and their families need to access are going to have shortages in terms of access because of the strikes. But I think we have to be conscious that this is because the people and the human beings that are the staff in those sectors also can't live. They are going to food banks. So this is a very interconnected web that we are seeing, with schools very much in the centre of it. If you have teachers not being able to eat, the children not being able to eat, there is reports that parents have passed out bringing their children to school in the national media and things like this. So we are really at a crisis, and a school that is usually the heart of the community and can give support in ways that often many others can't, are them themselves under strain. So I think it's really important that we not only see the bigger picture of all the things that are impacting on a child's education, but also saying that inclusive education itself is increasingly under threat in and amongst this, because there is still a very strong narrative towards segregated education for disabled children, and that is never an acceptable compromise, even in a cost of living crisis. I don't want children to go hungry or not to have the things that they need, but that argument is still being progressed by this government, and we are not seeing that particularly going away anytime soon. And I think this is where the interconnectivity of the cost of living crisis with people's wages, with kind of doctors and healthcare and all the people that are currently preparing to go on strike or have gone on strike, really does impact a child's educational access, because these are the teachers, these are, transport, it is the child's doctor, it is everything that would allow them to be in a place where they can access education is actually under threat. Not just from within the school grounds, but actually outside of it as well. So I think we really do have to kind of put that in context and really do understand what pressures parents of these children are kind of going under. Because if they can't get in touch with an educational psychologist, for example, they can't update their child's EHCP plan, because for both internal and external factors, they are at further risk of exclusion and not being able to access that environment at all. So I think this is very complicated. As a kind of silver lining and a bit of spoilers of some of the work that I was doing just this morning, we were at the GLA discussing some of the Greater London Authority's plans for kind of the warm home scheme and other things not related directly to education. But I did raise whether the criteria could include households that have children that have been excluded from school, as this increases pressure on household budgets. And we know from the statistics that a large amount, if not the majority, of students that are excluded are labelled with special educational needs or are multiply marginalised, which again is something that we want to kind of look at from an intersectional lens. So while that isn't confirmed and we don't know if they're going to take that forward, I do think it's really important that even when we're not talking directly about education, the educational kind of lead in to how educational inequality affects every other part of a household's life is really important, because that inequality and inaccess to education is actually putting real material pressure on a household, on parents, and on people in general.